This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome back to the penultimate episode of this book.
Penultimate episode of Crown of Swords. And it's a dark friend chapter. Well, dark-ish chapter.
It's a lot of dark friendery going on and some dupes of dark friends.
Mm-hmm. Forsaken dark friends, whatever you want to call them. The Dark One himself.
Atha on Shadar, Actually, no, because that's only for Shan-Chan. But it sounds so cool. But yeah, it's remarkable that we don't have the dragon's fang for the symbol. It's the Aiel spears, even though it's just like nothing but dark friend nonsense.
Right. Yeah, I would think like the two faces would be a good one. The dragon's fang would be a good one. The serpents would be a good one.
Yeah. The four-leaf clover serpent would make the most sense, honestly.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
But it does set up, like, the entire Shaido plot for the rest of the series. So in that respect, it is a very Aiel-centric chapter.
This is what happens to the remnants of the Shaido. And I shouldn't really say remnants, because again, as we'd established back in the Dumai's Wells chapters, most of the Shaido weren't at the battle.
Right.
So even if they killed all of them, which they didn't, they maybe killed 20% of the people at the battle. That still barely puts a dent in the Shaido population.
Yeah, this fragments them.
Yeah.
Into a lot of different pieces that end up dispersing over time, I think. I think that the Shaido probably don't last because of what happens here, but there are still a lot of them at this point.
And a lot of them do end up getting killed, but what you're left with is the core of the Shaido, which is the channelers, channeling wise ones, and some of these fighters. But yeah.
And then they kind of gather up some of the ones that got scattered along the way towards Malden.
Right. There is a
definitely
gathering.
Coming together, but this is the big scattering, and they don't all find their way back at all. But this is setting us on the trail towards what happens with Malden. This is what starts it.
Yeah, we've got a couple of different trails starting right now. Perrin being sent out to deal with the Prophet and Gildan is the big one, and then this one.
Yeah.
Those two plot lines are about to collide in a very slow-moving iceberg of a collision. The iceberg and the Titanic are heading right for each other, and we get to sit through the 3-hour movie.
Yeah. Accurate. So accurate. Ugh.
Would you like to read us in?
Sure. I was thinking the first 2 paragraphs, because it's just all in Galina's head. I can go through how can this happen to me, because it's the same energy.
I kind of want to hear you wail, how can this happen to me?
Okay.
That's what I was hoping for.
Okay, well, all right, I can do Despairing Dark Friend, who I have negative infinity sympathy for. Galina's one of those characters I'm just like, yeah, you deserve literally everything that happens to you. You're the worst. And then you do nothing to redeem yourself.
Right. She's probably the reason why the rumors of Red standing up false dragons are true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we get quite the info dump about stuff to do with the Black Aja in this read-in, which is fun. Chapter 40. Spears. And our symbol is the Aiel spears. Mountains rose all around Galina Casban. Little more than large hills behind, but snow-capped peaks ahead, and higher peaks beyond those. Yet she really saw none of them. The stones of the slope bruised her bare feet. She panted, lungs laboring already. The sun baked overhead as it had for seemingly endless days, burning the sweat out of her in rivers. Anything other than putting one foot in front of the other seemed beyond her. Strange that with all the sweat coming out of her, she could not find any moisture in her mouth. She had been Aes Sedai fewer than 90 years, her long black hair untouched as yet by gray, but for nearly 20 of those she had been head of the Red Aja, called the highest by other Red sisters in private, considered by other Reds equal to the Amerlin seat, and for all but 5 of the years she had worn the shawl, she had been of the Black Aja, in truth, not to the exclusion of her duties as a Red, but superior to them. Her place on the Supreme Council of the Black Aja was next to that of Alviar and herself, and she was one of only 3 who knew the name of the woman who led their hooded meetings. She could speak any name in those meetings, a king's, and know that name belonged to the dead. It had happened, with a king and with a queen. She had helped to break 2 Amerlins, twice helped turn the most powerful woman in the world into a squealing wretch eager to tell all she knew, and had helped to make it seem that one of those had died in her sleep and had seen the other deposed and stilled. Such things were a duty, like the need to exterminate men with the ability to channel, not actions she took pleasure in beyond that of tasks well done, but she had enjoyed leading the circle that stilled Swan Sanche. Surely all those things meant that Galina Casban was herself among the mightiest of the world, among the most powerful. Surely they did. They must. Her legs wavered like springs that had lost their tempering, and she fell heavily, unable to catch herself with arms and elbows tightly bound behind her. The once white silk shift, the only garment left to her, tore again as she slid on the loose rocks, scraping her welts. A tree stopped her. Face pressed against the ground, she began to sob. "How?" she moaned in a thick voice. "How can this happen to me? Why are the leopards eating my face?"
Oh, yeah, she made a deal with the devil, and the devil took its due. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't fiddle your way out of this one. It's not a thing.
No, she's really caught. I mean, and this is her fate. Like, she never escapes. She makes a lot of trouble for Aiel in the meantime, but she never manages to escape this fate.
No, and this is the chapter where the oath rod that focuses her efforts with Aiel shows up. And that's, it's the thing that, like, closes the door forever for her. And she's like, if I can just get the rod, I'll be fine. And then she, eventually she realizes she will never get the rod. But yeah, this is her life.
And that rod came from
Samael.
Yeah, Samael and the store of the kin.
Oh, is that how that happened? Oh, of course. Of course, because they just raided the room.
Those people got away. The golem was protecting them. We saw the thugs get away with the haul. They brought it back. Samael saw
an oath rod.
An oath rod, and immediately thought of Sevanna, and here he is.
And this one, as I recall, has the number 111 on it.
Sure. Well, 3 vertical lines, so it's...
Is it 3? Is it 111?
Yeah. Right.
Is it a Roman numeral W? I mean...
Is it Old Tongue with some other numerical, does 3 lines indicate, like, 30 in that particular, 3 tens?
Yeah, totally.
We really have no idea of what that numbering system is.
We do know it's not the same symbol as is on the White Tower's oath rod.
Right.
Because that has an actual number 3, whatever that means. And this
one
gets described as 111. Yeah, as I recall.
Interesting.
Someone can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that, I think that at some point she reflects on that it's different. Because she, obviously, as an Aes Sedai, did hold the original oath rod. So at one point she's able to look at that and say, well, it's different, but how different?
My thought would be that, we know these were used to basically bind criminals. And so I imagine there was one per district, one per police office, whatever, however they divided that up in the Age of Legends, each one got their own oath rod to use on criminals. One per judge, something like that. There must be, and so they would be numbered, just to, how do you deal with it?
So it's just a identifying mark. It
Sure.
doesn't represent anything about what the rod does. It just lets you keep track of who swore on what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And keep track of your oath rods, because the last thing you want is these things falling into the wrong hands and being used indiscriminately on a whole population of channelers, because that would be an absolute disaster if something like that happened.
Yeah, good thing that didn't happen.
Good thing that didn't, yeah. It's almost as bad as collaring them.
Seriously.
So, yeah, do we want to talk about the history of Galina and the Red Aja a little bit? Yeah, there's some good history here.
Such an info
dump. Totally. It's a great info dump. But we get her timeline, right? So she's been Aes Sedai for the 90 years, and for 85 years she's been Black.
Mm-hmm.
She was raised to the Shawl. As we know, the Black doesn't recruit from novices or accepted, so she's raised to the Shawl, and within 5 years she's Black.
Mm-hmm.
Really climbing that ladder.
And she's been head of the Red Aja for 20 years. So after 55-ish years being Black Aja, 60 years of being Aes Sedai, she climbs up to the head of the Red.
And whenever I see the number 20 years, my ears immediately perk up, because guess what happened 20 years ago? Rand was born, the nastiness in the tower, all the bullshit that went down.
I didn't even think about that.
is always, whenever 20 years ago comes up, I'm like, oh, yep, that's when all the shit went down because Rand was born, and she most likely somehow, as Black, took out the head of the Red Ajah.
Or the head of the Red Ajah was also the head of the Black, and Ishamael killed her, and so they needed a new Red. I mean, because I remember that's why Alviarin gets placed at the top of the Black Ajah, is because Ishamael kills her predecessor in a fit of rage. And I'm pretty sure that was about 20 years ago. So she could have been the head of the Red, too. Not sure, but the Red and the Black are very intertwined Ajahs. That's a good question, Nicholas. Wasn't Galina head of the Red before the vileness? I do not remember, because we get that exposition in like 2 more books.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be at the same time, so it's one of those like, does it happen right before or right after? That's hard to figure out.
Because the resolving of what happened with the vileness would have been less than 20 years ago, because it starts 20 years ago, goes for 2 or 3 years, and then there's all the people being sent into exile and all of that.
Yeah, I can't find any evidence of who was the head of the Red before Galina, or any evidence of like what happened to replace her. Because we have historical Tazine Johald. She commanded Pavar to break off relations with Siain 130 years ago. So we've got an ancient one, and then Galina, and then the people who replaced Galina. So as far as I can tell, there's a gap there where we don't have any evidence of who was head of the Red.
But she definitely rose to be head of the Red Ajah, fully entrenched in her Black Ajah hierarchies, and was probably very close to the top of the Black when that happened. So you've had the Red Ajah being led by a very high-ranking Dark Friend for as long as Rand has been alive. Yeah, that absolutely lends credence to the Red Ajah has been setting up false dragons and creating all kinds of horrible, nasty things for men who can channel and men who might be suspected of channeling. That it absolutely checks out. It's in her personality and her MO.
But again, we don't get any direct evidence of that in her POV. As much as I would love to have some of that, it's not like she's like, oh man, I really enjoyed setting up all those false dragons.
Right, but it's too logical to not have a seed of truth.
So we find out she's in Alviarin's heart, so sort of the ruling council of the Black, as far as we could tell. Mm-hmm. You know, she may not be the head of the Black, but if she's one of the ones who can go to Alviarin and be like, hey, I need the Black Ajah to do X, Y, and Z, she certainly, I don't know who the other one is, right?
Yeah, I don't think we ever learn.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if Alviarin goes down, Galina could very well be the one to come up in her place, right? Like, she's at that level. She also means that Alviarin and her are like basically rivals, right? Like Alviarin's gonna be looking from like a knife from Galina,
just
like
kind of,
just a smidge.
Yeah, and it would have been a major win for Galina to come back with Rand. That may have put her ahead of the Black. That victory, like as much as the Forsaken raise people up and cast people down, I can imagine this would absolutely be a win to put her at the head of the Black.
Yeah, for sure.
Galina's thinking about how she braked 2 Amerlins. One of those is Suan Sanche, right? Because she stilled her. The other one is
Tamra Ospenya.
Tamra Ospenya.
Yeah, the one who was there for the "he is born again." It was her keeper that said that.
And when did that happen?
20
years ago. So maybe that was doing that is what promoted her to her place of the Red.
Yeah.
Something. A lot of shit happened to Galina 20 years ago. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, like 21 through 17 years ago was a very tumultuous time.
It was, yes.
So many deaths, so many plots. Like, it was just shit hit the fan. Thanks a lot, Rand.
I was gonna say thanks a lot, Layman.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right.
And the only reason he did that was because politics, which had a lot to do with the Damodreads, probably. I mean, it's just... it's because Tigraine left. And that, like, made weird international politics. It made dude want a throne to, like, flex. So, again, it comes back to Guitarra Moroso. It's all about fucking Guitarra Moroso.
And Tamara, who was there in the room and started the search for Rand. And, and spilled her guts, right? So that's what she spilled her guts about, was Rand here. That's what she tortured out of her,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing she was able to keep back apparently was Swan and Moraine's involvement in that. That was the only thing she was able to keep back, as far as we know.
Because we think that man, this is just great. That what Galina was questioning her about is what Aes Sedai know about this, and they weren't Aes Sedai at the time, and so she had to give up every Aes Sedai, and they were all murdered. But at the time, Swan and Moraine were accepted, and so she didn't have to turn them up, but the oaths didn't force her to.
Because even dark friend Aes Sedai can be overly arrogant and trusting in Aes Sedai ways.
Oh, that's great insight that Galina was the one that tortured that out of her.
Mm-hmm.
I never really picked up on that before. That's great.
It's Galina's chickens are coming home to roost. You know, she has been deeply involved in why this plot, this entire book series is happening. She's been involved in trying to tear it down since the beginning. Mm-hmm. And oh no, that's turning out badly for her. So much sympathy. World's tiniest violin right here.
You stuck your foot in the fox house, you little hen. I don't know. There's not a good way to go about it. That's not the great analogy.
That's not how that analogy works.
No.
But yeah, she definitely voted for the leopards eating people's faces party and is upset that the leopards are eating her face.
It's very uncomfortable. Could you please stop? I thought you would eat their face, not mine.
Yeah, it's literally, she is a walking example of that.
And they're keeping her embarrassed. They're keeping her tired. You know, a lot of her, like, they're torturing me. They made Egwene do a lot of the same stuff. That's just like, hey, keep up, run with us. This is how we, like, get from place to place.
They're just crueler about it.
Yes, they're much crueler about it. There is the beating of the legs. There is the, like, I'm not sure how well they're watering her, because she does say she's thirsty all the time. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and with Egwene, it was a matter of she was choosing to obey as an apprentice. With Galina, she's a prisoner, right? Her arms are bound behind her.
She's staked. She has to sleep spread eagle, staked between four posts in the ground.
That's uncomfortable, I assume. Yeah, I've never done that. It sounds deeply uncomfortable.
I think we can all assume that's uncomfortable without actually giving it a shot. Because then you can't, like, what if you have a rock under your back? What do you do about that?
Sucks to be you.
Sucks to be you. Enjoy your night of sleep with a bruise you're going to wake up with.
But yeah, but I don't think they're trying to, like, shame her with the fact that she's naked, you know, or nearly naked. She's in this torn dress, and she's all like, "Oh, there's men that might be looking at me, and men are icky, and meh." And, like, they aren't even doing that on purpose. That's just the usual Aiel wetlander cluelessness happening.
Combined with, we don't have a dress for this guy Shine. We don't have white clothing.
She's insufficiently white clothing. It's fine.
Right. It's fine.
But yeah, the whole beating her while she runs thing. And she's already been pretty severely humiliated and tortured by Tharava. She's already looking for her at the first sign of stopping. She's already, like, thinking the correct titles for them because they've been brutally efficient in teaching her the correct titles. So she has, I mean, it's been 9 days. And she is a very brittle person. So she is malleable to their highly effective lessons.
She's a very privileged person. That's the whole thing, is, like, she has had all this power. She's had all this comfort, all this luxury her whole life. And all of a sudden she doesn't even get to say, like, when she gets to drink water. You know, like, that really has shaken her foundations. Unlike someone who maybe was already somewhat down in the world, and this just was like, oh, if you're already, like, a homeless farmer and you get taken prisoner, it's like, well, at least I'm getting fed, you know, like, as opposed to, oh, I'm one of the most powerful people in the world, and now, like, I get eaten on a nightly basis. Not great.
Yeah, and she's tried to run away a couple of times and has been severely traumatized from the responses to that, because there's this line about how she would not make the attempt again until she was sure of complete success. Very sure. Absolutely sure. That next attempt is her entire arc with Aiel.
Right.
Like, she doesn't try to escape again until she has the whole machination with Aiel. And even then, that doesn't end well for her.
And it breaks her. That's truly what breaks her. You know, when Galina's here talking about breaking her, it's like, yeah, that's when it happens. Right then and there.
Yeah, she has one more go in her. And when it fails, she completely falls apart. But she's been pretty beaten down already. Like, she's only got a little bit left of herself, even now. And we've got however many books of her getting progressively more institutionalized to her situation before that last attempt.
Again, though, you know, compressed timelines. It's she doesn't spend more than a few months.
Yeah, but I mean, compared to the 9 days she spent with them so far, it is a while.
It's a
relatively
long time, yeah.
speaking.
Although I do think this is a much more brutal existence because they are running from Dumai's Wells.
Yeah, that's rough. The hiking through snow later is, at least they aren't all running for their lives at Aiel speeds.
But again, it's so funny. They give you, it's like, oh, it's been 9 days since Dumai's Wells. And you're like, oh yeah, this whole book. Jordan's like, yes, 9 days. Which is 1 week in Wheel of Time time, because it's 10 days per week. So it's amazing that he's just compressing. He's like, yes, I am going into some insane detail. And that's why the story slows down. It's like we are taking a microscope to parts of these stories.
It's not a slog, it's just at 0.3x.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he'd refused to let any of his plot lines die. They all needed an equal amount of attention.
And that's one thing Sanderson was very effective at, is killing some plot lines and never bringing up certain characters again. Like Mikara. Truly not weak in the power. None of them were. But nevertheless, we never see her again.
Nope.
Nope.
That's it.
Named. So there are, again, just don't worry about her. She's not important.
Yeah, the ones that are important in this chapter are Tharava and Sevanna. Everyone else is just
a single mention. Yep. Especially all the Shaido that go through the portal. Yeah,
the whole little like snapshot of like this whole clan goes through and has this whole thing, and they don't even show up as prisoners later. That's literally one and done.
I think we get a one line that was like, oh yeah, we rolled over them. They didn't really slow us down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we casually slaughtered them. We don't know why they were there, but it's fine because we killed them all.
Wasn't that like Waramon or something that did that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't even remember because it's such a passing mention.
Thing,
like,
yeah.
It doesn't
And
matter.
we also don't know what group they're referring to because there's so many groups that were sent out.
Right. And none of the Wetlanders would notice anything other than Aiel. They're not going to notice Clan and Sept. Galina is having nightmares that her whole life would be lived under Tharava's hands. Those aren't nightmares. Those are prophecies.
Prophecies. Yeah.
Yeah. She gets watered and thinks about how they beat her for spilling water, even when there's plenty of water, because Aiel are like that.
So one of the things I always wondered about is, like, isn't it more effective to have water sort of spilled on you rather than to drink it and sweat it back out again? Because you lose a lot of salts. So in the real heat, when you're just pouring sweat, isn't it worth it to pour a little water over your forehead? Isn't that an effective way of cooling yourself?
I don't think they're trying to cool her down, is the thing. I think they're just trying to keep her hydrated. But you're right.
No, I should say, yeah, isn't it a more effective way to stay hydrated in some ways? Because it prevents you from sweating quite as much.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really good point.
Because, I mean, that's one thing I've noticed when I go hiking, especially in the heat, is it's important that I drink water, but it's just as important that I will like wet a hat or wet a bandana and keep that on my forehead, and that really cuts down on the amount of water I have to actually drink to stay hydrated, because at some point I'm sweating more water than I can physically drink. Mm-hmm. And I will get dehydrated even with a belly full of water, and I find the best way to prevent myself from doing that is just literally wear something wet.
Yeah, for sure. But Jordan doesn't seem to have thought that through on this one, because yeah, that makes total sense.
But I also have to wonder maybe if it has to do with the dryness. There's a difference in, like, pouring water on yourself that instantly dries doesn't really make a difference. But I think it would. It would suck away the heat, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, because I'm thinking about when I was at geology field camp and I drank a god-awful amount of water and didn't have to pee very often because it was so fucking hot. But it was really dry. Crazy, crazy dry. I've barely ever been in that low of humidity in my life. And yeah, things dried out so fast it was almost pointless to wet a bandana and put it on your neck, because 5 minutes later it would be dry. Like, at least sweat coming out of you, it's continuous, whereas a bandana is just like, it's wet and now it's not.
Well, that's why you have to continually replenish it, basically.
Yeah, but these guys are in the wetlands. They're not in the waste yet. So they don't have to think about the humidity in the same way. But it might also be another way of just low-grade torturing her.
Oh, well, I think what it has to do with the fact is the Shaido are conservative in ways that, like, they don't want to change. They want to maintain their pride in the water conservation and all that kind of stuff. And so you would be punished for spilling water in the waste. Why wouldn't you be
right?
Just punish them the same way they would in the waste. We're not making any accommodations for being in the wetland.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, any reason to beat the lying, stinking Aes Sedai is good.
Spill some water, that's a beating.
Mm-hmm.
Stumble all you run, that's a beating. Slow down, that's a beating. Protest
Run too
the
fast,
beating,
that's a beating. Straight to jail.
We get a mention of the mountain cat, striped in shades of brown and heavier than a man. Any idea what kind of cat we would call that?
A mountain lion.
Is that what it is? Just a mountain lion?
Or a cougar.
Or a cougar?
Or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know my cats that well.
It is a big kitty. Is apparently not particularly disturbed by the Aiel running by. And Tharava's like, I wish I was free like you, because I am also a cougar.
Isn't that Sevanna?
Yeah, it's more Sevanna, for sure. And then she's thinking like, well, Elida won't allow a red to be held, or Alviaran won't allow me to be held. Someone's going to rescue me. Someone's going to rescue me. I'm important. No,
they wrote you off ages ago. They wrote you off the second you rode out of the tower.
I mean, the second the news gets back, Elida's like, Galina deserves whatever comes to her. That stupid bitch, ruining all my plans, taking all my glory. Like, fuck her, and whatever happens to her, I don't care.
Yeah, and Alviaran's like, yeah, leave him.
Yeah, it makes no sense to go after her. It's a complete waste of resources.
Because you're not going to win.
No, and she fucked up. She lost you a bunch of resources. Like, there's just, no, you're as good as dead.
And Black Ajah never rescue anyone who messes up, right?
No, you might go assassinate them to punish them and keep them from spilling the beans. That's the closest to rescue that Black Ajah gets, or Dark Friends in general.
Speaking of Ispan, she just got captured in the last chapter.
Yeah, and that's going to end really well.
Failure is not tolerated among the Black.
Mm-mm. But for some reason, they always seem to think that if they beg really hard, then mercy will come to them. And it's just like, why would you think that? Have you met your compatriots?
I think they're just depending on the capricious nature, right? They're hoping that, on a whim, they might be granted mercy, because that does happen sometimes. But not usually when you fucked up. Usually it's like the mercy is granted when it's just they're going to kill you on a whim anyway.
Right, yeah, for sure. And it's also like, again, the cowardice that brings people to the dark side, right? Like, you're a coward. You don't hold to your convictions. You believe that if, you don't believe anything, really. So when shit hits the fan, you're just like, I'm going to cower and hope. And it's just like, you have no convictions. You have no solidity. You're going to beg for what's impossible. And she's thinking here, like, I believe that I would keep my promises and my words even if a man rescued me. And it's like, first of all, no, you wouldn't. But the weakness of mind, the weakness of spirit to actually believe that, to be able to lie to yourself to that degree and believe it, is like, stinking cowards. All of you.
And we see she doesn't keep her promise.
No.
Yeah. She traps Fael and I mean, going into the future, but the whole reason that Galina has to take out Fael is because Perrin sends the message and she doesn't want the message to get through. And so she has to lie, and in order to hide the lie, Fael has to die.
Yeah, she was considering letting Fael and her compatriots live just on a whim. And then the encounter with Perrin is like, oh, nope, that strategically is, nope, we can't do that. So yeah, she's lying to herself here. She has no intention of holding promises, but she's so desperate that she's like, she's going through the stages of denial, or the stages of grief, right? She's just like bargaining, and it's just like, that's not how this is going to end. But then Sevanna,
treacherous Sevanna.
Against treacherous Tharava.
And yeah, it's again, this is the irony of like, ugh, how dare this person betray me that you were planning on betraying?
Yeah, it's just mutual bullshit. And it's hilarious that neither Tharava nor Sevanna are actually dark friends. Neither of them are dark friends. They just happen to be as bad as dark friends.
I think of them as the Feign evil, right? The internal traitorous
evil.
Yeah, the Shadow Logoth evil. And the Shadow Logoth evil and the Dark One evil do not get along. They don't, because Dark One evil is authoritarian, right? Everybody gets in line, everyone follows the leader. Shadow Logoth evil is everyone betrays each other for their own self-interest.
Which is why Tharava and Sevanna, despite being on the same side of that alignment, are like each other's worst enemies. They are not on the same side in anything except with respect to the other flavors of evil and good in the world. Very White Cloak, also. I mean, they're not fanatics, but White Cloaks are evil in the same way. So yeah, there's this exchange about 9 days, and Galina's like, it has to have been months. I've been suffering so much. It can't have been only a week.
Week, certainly. A month or more. No,
not even a full Randland week.
So she comes in front of 13 women who can channel, and she's got the woman who can shield with her still. So it's a total of 14 wise ones. But I think there's 14 just because normally it would be 13, but she's got someone there to hold her shield.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder why there's 13, because this isn't an Aes Sedai proceeding, and they're not trying to bind her or turn her, so I don't know why there's 13.
I think just because it's the biggest circle you can form with women, it's just something that powerful groups of Aes Sedai sort of form groups of 13 fairly unconsciously. Like, oh, what's the most powerful thing we can do? Let's get our top 13 together.
Aiel didn't know about linking.
Oh, you're right. They don't know about linking.
They learned about that like from Egwene, and the Shaido definitely are not.
Don't, yeah. That's a good point.
So maybe there's just some sort of like legacy reason to have 13, or maybe it's just a coincidence of who
it was there.
Thorava and Sevanna had going on that day. I don't know.
Or maybe Jordan just loves the number 13 and throws it in there as a symbol to the rest of us.
Which I wouldn't be super upset about. It's fair. And we see the Kyrian and Gaishine, who are going to need to have a new word designed for them because they're lifelong Gaishine. It's just like a little bit of foreshadowing for a huge part of the Shaido arc moving forward.
We have a word for lifetime Gaishine. Yeah. It's called slave. Yeah. Talk to the Shanchan about it.
Or the Sharans. I mean, they sell people across the waste to the Sharans for this exact purpose, so...
That must be where the idea comes from.
I mean, I think it's pretty logical from the year and a day to just go into the rest. I mean, it's such a Sevanna thing to do. To be like, what if a year and a day was a lifetime and a day?
And this whole scene is very much like opulent palace, abusing your power by having a bunch of people do work for you for no reason other than you have a bunch of people at your service.
Just to show off. And she's sitting on this huge cushion that's like getting towards a chair. It's not really a chair, but like it's going there.
But her knees are definitely bent at like 90 degrees to be on the ground.
Yeah, and she like gets distracted like by her rings like on her hand while she's dispensing opinions. She's just it's very much like it's just optics and opulence and showing off. That's all that's happening here. And there's this hilarious interaction where Sevanna is pinning Desane's murder on Galina and claiming that it proves Aes Sedai can lie, while not actually believing that Aes Sedai can lie, not knowing that Galina's Black Aja. Galina's like, oh no, she knows I'm Black Aja, but no, Thorava's using her for propaganda and disinformation.
It's great. She's absolutely... Galina's talking about killing wise ones in the battle, whereas Thorava and Sevanna are talking about killing Desane, which they did themselves.
Yeah.
I love that cross information. That becomes proof to everybody else out there that Galina killed this person.
Yeah, it's hilarious. They're completely talking past each other.
This is one of those places where the two POVs, really understanding the two different POVs helps you understand what's going on in this scene. Because you really, or even the three POVs, right? You've got the women who actually killed Desane who know what they're talking about, the women who weren't involved, and then Galina. Yeah,
and it all adds up to support what Sevanna wants, but Galina is like confused and and she is legitimately indignant. Like, why would you be mad that some of you died in battle? Isn't that how battle works? It's like,
right.
Think it through, Galina. Well, but Galina can't. She doesn't know that Desane was murdered. She doesn't know who Desane was. She has no idea about all these Aiel machinations that are going on. Only we know. Only we can see all the parts. And it's really funny. And
I love how she thinks working for Sevanna would be better than working for Thorava here. She's like, anything's better than Thorava. And I'm like, is it though? I think you underestimate exactly what black wool feels like in the hot sun.
I mean, she does stay more afraid of Thorava than Sevanna the entire time, though.
That is a
because
good point.
Sevanna just wants to dominate Aes Sedai. Tharava is like a sadistic dominator of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is strongly implied that she is a sadist and is physically and sexually abusing Galina in ways that Sevanna is not going to put out that much effort. As long as she can order an Aes Sedai around and just have total control of her fate, that's all she wants. She's not a sadist in the same hands-on way as Tharava.
But at the same time, being in possession of Sevanna doesn't really protect her from Tharava in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, just because you're in possession of Sevanna, that gets you away from Tharava, like you think it's going to. You're going to be at the whims of Sevanna and still be abused by Tharava. There are limits, but...
Yeah, because Sevanna can then use access to her as a bargaining chip in her battles with Tharava. And it's like, oh, yes, I'll give you your little chew toy if you do something for me. And Galina's like, please don't. And it's like, did I ask you? But, you know, at this point, she's not fully aware of the currents between the two Aiels. So she doesn't know what to want correctly at this point. Not that there's a thing to want. There's not a good thing for her. There's no path out of this. She should just go find a way to like fall off a cliff. That would be better for her.
Don't, it's one of those things where it's like, how do I fix this? You don't.
You die.
Yeah.
That is how you escape.
Or you live with it.
Yeah, you can either be Tharava's 90% of the time or 99% of the time. These are the gradations that you get to manage. Congratulations.
And so with that sort of mistaken identity, all the wise ones present declare her Datsang. Sevanna, Tharava, and...
a round-faced wise one that we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Again, nobody else in this chapter is at all important.
Yeah. I love this line. Sevanna could not be trusted, but perhaps she could be bought. Tharava was a force of nature, as well try to buy a flood or an avalanche. I like that description of the two of them, how different they are.
Yeah, definitely. Tharava is like an evil Cerealia.
Oh, absolutely.
Nicholas says, yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
100%. There's that same force of will, just with different goals.
Yeah, pointed in different directions. This whole Datsan thing is Sevanna's way of trying to wrest control away from Tharava over Galina.
Mm-hmm.
That's her way of being like, you can't possess her because nobody can possess a Datsang. She is a possession of the entire clan rather than of any individual wise one. And that's supposed to be a power play, and it does piss Tharava off, so it kind of works, but it changes later.
Well, and I think what it does, it keeps Tharava from taking complete possession of her.
Exactly. But the Datsang status gets lifted later because she's not wearing black by the time we get to Fail arriving in Winter's Heart. She's dressed in white by then.
I don't remember how that happens.
I don't remember either, but you don't dress Datsang in white. So her status does change. Oh, Nicholas is reminding us. It's when she swears on the rod. She's able to upgrade out of Datsang status.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't happen until...
Well, it's the next time we see her, which is The Path of Daggers, Chapter 11.
Oh, okay. There you go. But yeah, she gets stuffed. She gets taken out of her silk shreds and put into black wool. And she's like, I'm clothed decently. Men can't see my titties. It's so much better. Yay.
That to me, I hate the heat so much. And the idea of being in a black robe in the heat. Yeah. Same. It just makes me gag. It makes me want, it would make me just want to tear my skin off. I don't know what I would do. I feel like I would just try and strip myself out of it constantly. They would beat me for it, and I'd still try and take it off.
I cannot deal with the heat. I get so hot sometimes. I'm like, so would I actually be cooler if I peeled my skin off? Would that work? Would that be worth it? I do not.
I can only take off so many layers.
Yeah, it's really bad. So the concept of being in any color wool,
mm-hmm.
much less black, is just I would just go kill myself. It's not, surviving that is not an option.
Yeah, of all the tortures that they describe, I'm like, all right, cut me, bruise me, break some bones. It's gonna fucking
rub pepper
hurt.
Sauce in my welts.
Right, whatever. Yeah, I'm in it all sounds miserable. I'm not saying, but the one that truly horrifies me is put me in a black robe and stick me in the sun.
Yeah, just give me constant heat stroke on the inside. And just those waves of heat. Like, it's awful. It's completely awful. It is the worst. And then to have to do manual labor, carrying like 40-pound sacks up and down hill, or rocks in this case, but
and the pointless labor, like, that's just something that really does bother me. Like, pointless labor, I find, like, when I work a job and they have me doing, like, busy work, I cannot do it. I just can't, you know? And so, like, imagine, like, your entire life is busy work at an office in the hot sun that's also physical labor.
Yeah, pointless manual labor, extra hot. That's just the worst. You don't even have to be Aiel for that to be the worst. That's just literally the worst.
And so, yeah, that's the last of we see of Galina until a couple of books from now, Path of Daggers.
That's next book.
Like I said, that's the last we see of Galina until next book.
Yeah.
Where she gets to swear on the oath rod that was just given, that is about to be given to Sevanna.
Yeah, she's just set up to be a rope for a game of tug of war between two wise ones, with one of them being interested in trying to use her channeling somehow and the other just wanting to abuse her. It's yeah, she's just going to be stuck in limbo. We're just going to put her on a shelf and let her huck rocks back and forth until we can get back to her next book.
Yeah, I mean, because mostly they're just trying to break her, right? They're just trying to make her channel and do what they say without thinking about it twice.
Yeah, and to one-up each other. That's, like, as much a part of it as dominating the Aes Sedai in her own right. But yeah, Tharava's like, she's tamed already, and Sevanna's like, no. I'm kind of with Tharava on that. She's mostly tamed at this point.
Yeah, but we do see her still trying to fight back, right? She is not broken. She is tamed, but she's not broken, and that's a big difference.
True. And this fucking line from Sevanna, wetlanders could be tamed like horses. It's just like, ew.
She thinks people are animals, which they kind of are.
I mean, biologically speaking, socially speaking, yes. Yes, we are part of the kingdom of animals. This is a thing. But yeah, the ethnocentrism and basically racism that she brings to the Aiel versus Wetlander thing is just, it turns into chattel slavery really fast.
No, and that's what we see is this transformation from an Aiel culture to basically a slave trader.
Yeah, these colonizing, pillaging, enslaving, they're really not Aiel at all. Like, they're more lost than any Aiel ever has been, ever.
And this is what the Aiel would become without the column Terran Grial, because they wouldn't have had the wise ones and the clan chiefs to lead them to a better path.
Yeah, without a sense of honor. I mean, that's a huge part of the problem, and that's what we see in Winter's Heart with the Aiel all drinking and assaulting the Gaishain women. It's like they've lost their moral compass and everything falls apart. The leaders decide they can do what they want, and then every person in the whole rank and file is making it up for themselves, and people's baser natures don't have any hold on them. You know, not everyone becomes a drunken rapist, but like a lot of them do, and a lot more of them enable it by not doing anything about it. It's the columns and the way of the leaf.
And we see the brotherless have some of that debate internal. Like, what do we do about this? Like, we don't want to be part of this anymore, so we're leaving. Is the least you can do, but okay.
Giotto is what makes them Aiel. It's what keeps them to the important parts of the Covenant. And when they toss that out the window in favor of fancy finger rings and chairs...
And that's why I say these are Shaido. They're not Aiel. They're Shaido.
Yeah. They are thoroughly outside of the pale of what Aiel is. The brotherless are hanging on in a weird limbo space, but their complacency puts them pretty far onto the Shaido side. So Shadar pops out of nowhere and is like, would you like an oath rod? Because I have one.
And not just Shadar, but also Messiah.
Messiah.
Messiah? Maybe it is Messiah of some sort. Yeah.
Why not?
But yeah, Shadar, of course, being Samael, and Messiah being Grendel.
Mm-hmm. Both in their dark-skinned outfit or mask of mirrors so that they don't look anything like themselves. Messiah has increased her cup size significantly.
Shadar has increased his height significantly.
Yeah, they've both just like, we need to be more imposing, more threatening.
Well, it's also where, where he feels most insecure is his height, right? Just a little bit shorter than LTT. What do you bet? What do you bet he's now a little taller in his Mask of Mirrors?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Plus, Aiel are particularly tall, so probably after his last meeting, he's like, I don't like that ratio. I need to.
So, he gets his Soth Rod, and we get this line, it only came into my hands yesterday, and I immediately thought of you. And, of course, we were able to time things pretty accurately based on the holidays, and so we do know that yesterday was the day that the thugs got away with stuff from the cache in Abu Dar.
And presumably he was able to sort through that pile much faster than Elaine and Avienda because he knows what he's looking for.
Yeah, assuming he's able to look at the pile and go, that's an Oath Rod, right? That's an Angreal, He doesn't necessarily have to, feel it. Also, I'm not sure how much, he may not have gotten as much stuff.
Yeah, it's several guys with armloads
right.
versus several women with backpacks full. I mean...
Well, there was a whole bunch of soldiers and stuff that they had carry things.
Yeah. So yeah, he probably got less. But yeah, and it makes sense that he doesn't need the Oath Rod because everyone he interacts with would know what it is and wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So it's a useless toy for him to just throw into the world to make chaos more chaotic. Be like, hey, you want to play with this thing that's going to cause division in your ranks? Here, have fun.
You don't need a Terrangreal when you have compulsion.
It's meant for binding criminals. It's a meaningless toy for where he's at. But it's a great way to make sure that the Shaidos stay fractured and pissy at each other.
We get a description of how to use it. You channel in spirit into the number. And it's interesting that the person who's holding it is the one who gets bound, not the person channeling.
That is interesting. I wonder if it's because when they were made, you were shielded when you made the promises because you're a criminal.
That would make sense to me.
And we learned that it's only women who can channel, not any woman. It has to be a woman who can channel, who gets bound.
Right. Well, it's in the same way that you can't convert anyone to the Dark One, right? It has to be someone who can channel. There's that opening that this takes advantage of, that vulnerability of the fact that you have to open yourself to the power. And so that creates a space where you can be open to other things.
Though he does say that there is such a thing as a binding chair. It's harder to bind people who can't channel, but it is possible. But not with this tool. This tool only works on channelers.
And this does, I love my theory that the binding chair is the
Crystal Throne.
Crystal Throne.
I'm so on board with that. It makes so much sense to me.
It does, though. The fact that it's harder than it is with the rod makes me feel like the binding chair doesn't work the way, sitting on it and speaking seems like a very easy way of creating compulsion.
I bet that there's more to it than that. There's probably some sort of ceremony wherein the person who is being raised into the emperor's seat gets bonded to the chair and gets power over it or something. I don't think it's just anyone who sits in it. I imagine that getting raised to that level is a very magical ceremony.
I also imagine there's some ceremony where being of the high blood, because we definitely know that the Seekers are bound to the throne in a ceremony, right? And we know they can't break their word.
We know that?
Isn't there's some ceremony where you're raised to a Seeker, and basically if you get because having the Raven and Tower tattoo means you're permanently bonded and your entire line is. So I imagine part of the reason that is because when you get getting those tattoos has, how am I trying to say? When you are raised as Seeker, in the same way that Rand gets the dragon tattoos, the Seekers get the Raven and the Tower tattoo. Huh. And that bonds them with the Terrangreal and makes them absolutely loyal to the Empress.
Interesting. I could see it. We know that that the tattoos can be given out to just about anybody, but yeah, I could see that at the higher levels, at the actual imperial circle being a thing.
Well, and the Seekers in particular, right? Once they're bound, they and all of their descendants are bound for all time to serve the Empress. They're always slaves.
And we also know that the Ogier have a very special relationship where they're not property of the Empress, but they are sworn to her. I could see there being a song trigger on that binding chair or something like that. Oh, there's so much we don't know.
There's so much that could be there, right? There's something going on with compulsion and the Seekers and the fact that that they're just so loyal to the Empress.
They should live forever.
And then that is to the Empress, no matter who it happens to be at the time. And that it immediately transfers upon death to the next person. Like, that just stinks of compulsion to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some actual compulsion overlaid with a whole great big fuck ton of tradition and culture and a system that is self-reinforcing. That totally checks out.
This is another drop of evidence, and it makes it less likely that just anyone sitting on the chair can just speak and compel people around them.
Yeah, they have to be bonded to the chair in some way, and it probably costs something from them, you know. Like the chair has sentience whispering in their ear or something like that.
But I do think something about that is the reason why the Empress has a voice, and she uses sign language to talk instead of normal verbal communication.
Yeah, I like that whole concept so much more than, they just have really strong traditions, because, like, I don't like the idea of tradition being that strong that, like, millions of people just, like, bow down to it. It's like, no, there's got to be dissidents. There's got to be factions. Like, you add just a little bit of magical glue at the top, it becomes a lot more believable.
Yeah, imagine every time you have a really powerful rebel, you take them into your chamber, you make them, go through a ceremony, they become loyal through compulsion, and they have all their followers immediately follow you, right? Like, you are able to use politics and negotiation to win every time, but it's really just compulsion.
Yeah, it's politics and negotiation at the lower levels amongst peons who aren't a problem. The high levels where it's actual hazard, you just zap them. Yeah, and probably, like, the Shanshan don't even fully understand what they're doing anymore, because where is tradition and where is magic? Like, they're not even going to know how much they're using magic necessarily.
But I'm guessing being raised to the blood originally, I don't know if it still is, but originally had to do with being compelled by the chair and being bound to the chair in some way so that she could compel you with the voice.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, yeah, the traditions, they percolate outward, they grow and change out at the edges. But, like, what's going on at the middle is, like, stronger than just tradition. I like this so much.
I like it too. I really do. So it's just hard. It's hard not to fall into that. Again, we have so little information that we can't. It's mostly speculation at this point.
This is one of the few pieces of textual information we have. We are running with it.
And I'm running hard.
We are running a marathon with this. It's a relay race of I believe you, you believe me. Like, we're going. We got it.
So back to the book. Sevanna vastly misunderstands the relationship between the Forsaken. She thinks he thinks she's bound to him and he's under control, and there's all sorts of things going on.
She's like, I can tempt her away from this guy by just offering her the oath rod because I'm on a level with them. And it's like, oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah, this is
no, you aren't.
Oof. She really feels like she's just, playing among adults at their ankles, like a child playing among adults.
Yeah, and she's like, oh yeah, and then he insulted me, so I'm going to put him in black because that's totally going to be within my power. And it's just like, no, it's not. He appears mysteriously with objects of the power, and you're just like going to slap him in guy shine black for insulting you. Why do you think that those things go together?
Well, it's the same person who thinks she can just collar the Dragon Reborn and marry him, and that's going to work.
This is true. I'm just going to chain him outside my tent and get babies off of him. That's a super realistic career plan. Yeah.
Sevanna is a child. Sevanna is young, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and she just thinks if she believes in it, she can do something, it'll happen. And, like, it's kind of worked for her with men.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the part where they keep dying before they give her complete dominion over the world, but,
that's because her
details.
choices are fucking terrible.
Well, she has to pick men who are easily manipulated and led around by a pair of boobs. Like,
it's a good point.
They're not necessarily going to be the best at surviving all the other things that are involved.
So Kadar, I think he makes up this risk. He says there's clans coming from the south and 2 more from the north. Like, that's just completely made up. I don't think there's any of Rand's Aiel in the area. Oh yeah,
their orders are to stay until you're all dead or prisoners, and Althor means to finish you. Like, no, that's
lies. Just all
complete lies. Fluff and nonsense.
Right. Maybe he lied. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. You think?
You think? He's setting you up for something else.
Yeah. And the whole, like, he's taught wise ones how to travel over short distances. A recent rediscovery. It's just like, this is all bullshit. He's just, like, riffing. He's just improvising his way through this. Like, I mean, in the whole box of fools things, like, he's playing. He is literally playing this entire scene.
So I'm trying to figure out Samael seems to just be on a cocaine high, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's just manic all over the place. I don't know what he thinks is going on with Rand, but he is wrong.
This whole book, his whole interaction with the Aiel and everything, he is just like, what are you smoking?
Right?
Literally, What are you smoking right now? You are so confused and so confident. None of this makes sense.
I think he's just dumb. Honestly, I honestly do think Samael is just not very smart. I think he misinterpreted Rand's message to him. I think thinks he's pulling all these clever things off with Sevanna and Grendel, and it's just kind of missing the boat a lot.
I mean, we've talked before about how he's basically like the dumb jock of the Forsaken.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I really do think that's what's going on. I think we really have just encountered a Forsaken who's dumb.
It's so hard to believe because he's like a general and he's like one of the 13 most powerful, and like he's been set up as a bogeyman. I mean, there's so many reasons to think that he's got something complicated going on, but like,
intelligence is not one of the qualifications to be Forsaken.
It's not even necessarily a quality that to make you a good military strategist. That's more of a game mindset. And
stupid bravery can sometimes win you a lot of battles.
Mm-hmm.
That an intelligent person wouldn't, gamble with.
Sometimes the simple things are complicated, and sometimes the complicated things are simple.
Yeah.
I guess.
And he's not like, we talk about Agenor being the nerdy scientist. Agenor's smart as hell, right? Like, not very useful in this age.
Right, yeah.
Grendel, very good at reading people, I wouldn't say Semirog is all that smart. She does a bunch of dumb stuff. She's evil as fuck, but she's not
got
very
lots
smart.
of medical knowledge. She knows lots of things about anatomy. So much like Agenor, like very specific kind of knowledge, but not an all-around, all-purpose kind of knowledge set. Yeah.
And so with Samael, I think it's kind of the same thing. He's like pretty good at strategy, but like he misses obvious facts all the time.
And has the confidence to never once question his own decisions and to convince people because he's convinced himself. I mean, it's easier to believe someone when they don't realize they're lying, right? Even if they're wrong, if they don't think they're lying, it's a lot harder to catch their lie.
Because we do a lot of that. We're like, are you lying? Do you know you're lying? We feel like we can figure that out no matter what the truth is. We feel like we can detect a lie in somebody.
Mm-hmm. And then, he's just playing. I mean, the whole naming these things fool boxes is just like, that's a ridiculous risk.
And the fool boxes do nothing, right? So every time someone presses a button, he's weaving a gateway himself and tying it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's just watching them press the buttons and doing it.
Yeah, he just gave them a piece of stone with a red dot painted on it and is like, it's magic, trust me.
The only thing I was wondering is maybe he connected the weave to that box so when they pressed the button, it completed the weave.
Sure.
And somehow initiated the gateway. It's
kind of like a potato clock or something.
Right, yeah. But like it only worked once, with the weave that he already had pre-set up.
Because he had to, yeah. No, yeah, I could see that. So that way the theatrics work out correctly.
Right.
Because he does have a flair for the dramatic.
In that weave of the gateway, he's tying the final little bit to the button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's like, you just need a human hand to touch it. And it probably doesn't even have to be a man's hand. I mean, that is such a ridiculous stipulation. No, if a woman touches it, it's going to break. Like, no, what? No, that's not how weaves work. I mean, I guess I don't know everything about the Age of Legends, but...
No, but everything here is just a pack of lies. There's so many lies in here, it's like, we can't take any of this seriously, because, like, every statement that we can check is false.
Yeah, for sure. And then Sevanna is like, maybe he's lying. I don't doubt him exactly, but he won't dare betray us, not while he hungers for the gold we're going to give him. And it's like, the amount that he doesn't care about your gold cannot be overstated.
Well, and again, she thinks he's just a normal wetlander, which, like, again, get a clue. He's appearing out of nowhere. This is clearly not, like, he's got all these access to these powerful objects. This is not just a normal wetlander. Like, he's something different.
All wetlanders are equally stupid, even the ones with special powers. She's so dumb.
But she does take that one precaution, which is, because of her suspicion, she brings all the channelers with her. So she has a power center.
Yeah, she denies all the other Shaido their channeling wise ones and collects them all to herself, and he doesn't notice. And it doesn't end up doing any good for her against him, but it does really set up the Battle of Malden to be epic.
All of the Shaido channelers in one spot. There is something interesting here. I think one of the reasons he weaves the gateways is he doesn't want them to be able to see the female half.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want the channeling wise ones to be able to see a gateway woven with the female half. So, like, he couldn't use Grendel to do it. Even though they are bonded this whole time, by the way. That's something that...
They're linked, yeah.
They're linked this whole time, yeah. Sorry, not bonded, but linked in a circle, and he has control of that circle. So he could use the female half of the power to do some of these things if he wanted to.
But he absolutely does not want them getting the trick of traveling, because that would make them slightly more dangerous than they are. But, I mean, this is... The fact that she takes all of the channeling wise ones is what extra spells doom for all these other groups of Aiel.
Yeah, they may have had a chance, but
she takes away their ability to, protect themselves, to heal themselves, to find their way. I mean, because the wise ones do so much more than just wield the power.
She does send wise ones with them.
But only the non-channeling ones.
The non-channeling ones, yeah.
So it really spells doom for all those groups because they have way less wise ones than they should, and the ones they have don't have those extra abilities, don't have that extra strength of will, don't have the ability to decide to be innovative with their normally kept secret skills, right? They don't have that, so they're extra screwed.
So then we switch to Merrick's POV, and this whole POV, I honestly don't have a lot to say about it other than the tragedy of it.
It's really sad.
It's a really sad POV.
Yeah, so Merrick is the leader of the Moshane Shaido, so that's a sept, right? Because the Shaido are the clan, so the Moshane are the sept. And so he's the leader. He goes through with his wife. Their 2 children get left behind, which is weird because, like, at the end of the scene, there's no Aiel left at the clearing, but the things also close as people are coming through.
Right. So the last one is one that he holds open. All of the gateways with the buttons he ties off except for one, the one that Sevanna goes through. So anyone who doesn't make it through their assigned gateway would have just gone through Sevanna's.
Oh, you think?
Because he held that open until all the Aiel were gone.
Oh, okay.
I can imagine there would be a bit of an argument where she sees these gateways. Well, she went through one right away. So that's the problem, is there's no leaders left behind to see these gateways close and kill the Shaido. They would have only gotten reports of that after all the Shaido were like, well, I guess I'm going through that gateway. Because they also think they're all going to the same place.
Right, which doesn't make any sense.
They don't think they're getting broken up. They think they're all getting transported to one place. They just have lots of gateways so they can do it quickly.
Everything about this just doesn't add up under any scrutiny at all. It's such a weak thing. And so they go through this gateway and there's a drop, and then there's this weird continuity error later where they're like pulling heavily loaded pack horses and mules like through the gateway over this drop, and there's no mention of like mules freaking out about the drop. It's just
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's great.
Yeah, I was reading through it just being like, he stumbles on the drop and then they're like pulling, I guess they're not pulling wagons through. So there's that, but it's just, again, it's such a throwaway POV that's just meant to let you know how sad everything's going to be.
I mean, I guess, if the drop is a foot or 2, well, how far is it?
More than a foot above the ground is the line.
Okay. So, but probably not 2 feet then.
Okay, yeah. No,
so you
okay.
You just have to pull them through and be like, there is a drop, there's a step down, it's like, it's a big step, but it's still just a step down.
Yeah, okay. I when I read it, I was like, clearly this means there's wagons, and that makes no sense to me. But now I'm rereading it, and it's like there's no wheeled conveyances. It's okay.
No, yeah, it's just pulling them through the weird, because you got to pull them through the weird gateway because they're like, what the fuck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
But you can see through it, so I guess it wouldn't be that weird for them. For them, it would just be like walking through any other doorway.
But yeah, their eldest son and their eldest daughter are behind and don't make it through the gateway. So they either get chopped into mincemeat by the gateway closing, or they trailed behind the main body of Shaido.
I imagine they end up in the main body of Shaido with Sevanna. But again, we never get another mention of these characters. It's not like we see them. It's not like Aiel encounters them at some point in the camp. There's no mention of them whatsoever.
The useful thing about this perspective is it gives us a peek into how the brotherless are fitting into the Shaido. Because he's thinking about how, like, it doesn't matter how you feel about Randolph Thor, you do not abandon Sept and Clan, I don't trust these people. And he thinks that, and then by the end of the POV, he's thinking, well, if they fight with us, then maybe they can be part of our clan, and then they all get toasted anyway. But it gives us just this little peek into like, this is a dynamic that is happening in the Shaido. It's not a Shaido dynamic, but it's happening inside the Shaido. And that will become relevant later. And it's important for us to understand like who the brotherless are, why they are there, how the other Shaido feel about them. They're very relevant later on.
And we do get both perspectives, right? Merrick was not sure what he himself believed, but a man did not abandon sept and clan, whereas the brotherless had the exact opposite of, listen, we are honor bound because of what we believe to abandon our sept and clan, right? Our sept and clan is following a false prophet and breaking Jito, so we have to walk away, right? And so there's the dichotomy between those two, where they both think of each other as breaking Jito.
Yeah, because the leadership at the very top fractures, and then every person is left to make it up for themselves because their leaders aren't aligned. And you end up with people on opposite sides of the same divide for the same reasons.
And then, just in case Dumais Wells wasn't horrifically bloody enough for you, you have pieces of men go falling down a slope, and one half of a man sliding to his feet. Like, again, things that, like, when people are like, "Oh yeah, Robert Jordan," isn't that not very gross or bloody? It's just, I'm like,
pieces of bodies,
right? Like sliding down a slope. Like, can you imagine that in slow motion? Just body falls and just like,
and you know that person's not dead.
Not dead right away.
He was just guillotined at the waist. He's still alive.
I think it's possible he was guillotined vertically.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, he's dead.
Yeah. That's the brain.
He's still twitching.
Right, yeah.
Still spurting. It's horrifying. The fact that you have to make up the pictures in your mind actually makes it worse in some ways than if you were reading a page of descriptions of severed arteries.
Truly, which half is the question? The front half or the top half? The bottom half? The back half? There's all sorts of halves.
You're making that shit up yourself. You're not being told. It's nasty.
Definitely. Like, I want to do a poll on Twitter. Which half of the man got severed?
What is the front half? That is the question. Is he a hot dog or is he a burger?
How would he put on pants? Like this or like?
It's terrible. And then we get the whole relationship between this clan leader or this sept leader and his wife. Just like, you see them, you fall in love with them, and then they're gone, because it's like, you hope there would be no need to cry in one another's arms once they could be alone. Hey, wife, you're going to need to be prepared to put on Guy Shine White. I'm going to go lead a suicide charge. It's like, you didn't know about these characters. They're from the bad guys, but now you're sad.
So this reminds me of Dina.
Yes.
So there's a certain amount of like, oh, what if we make just a really great character, but there's not a lot of character development to go through, so we're going to give you a perfect character and then just kill them off right away. Just give you this like little bit of POV and be like, I love these people, but there's nowhere to go from there.
Yeah. Again, like she, laid a bridal wreath at his feet and threatened to cut his throat if he wouldn't pick it up because she was a maiden back then, and like all this like, and then take them away.
Or another Up, the Pixar movie. That little short story at the beginning. That's basically what this is.
Just pulls your heart out with 0 words. God, I hated that part of that.
Yep. And it's also showing you that even on both sides of the most justified horrific battle, there are still innocent people just trying to live their lives.
Just trying to make the best choices for them and their families, and they're doing the best with what they've got, and they're on the wrong side.
And I think that actually is Perrin's insight, right? Is he brings people to his side. Now, the Shaido need to be wiped out for reasons. They're corrupt.
And it seems like that's been a cultural thing with them for a generation or 12. They're the biggest clan, so...
But I do wonder if maybe that was Perrin's mistake. Maybe if he, instead of wiping out the Shaido, had somehow made an accommodation with them and had them back on his side, used his threatening force.
If anyone could have done it, it would have been Perrin. The Aiel are very opinionated, so I don't know if they would have been willing to do anything other than swear blood feud against him, but if anybody could have brought them over, it would have been Perrin.
Or at least the brotherless, right? I think that would have been an actually a very interesting foil to the Berelain and Fail, is to have a, what was the guy's name?
Roland.
Roland and Perrin dynamic on the other side of that.
Oh, man.
They survive, and Perrin brings the Brotherless into the fold, and they're led by Roland, and he has to deal with the fact that Aiel's kind of a little attracted to him, and is absolutely, like, he protected her, he never violated her, now they're back on the other side, and he's still trying to woo her.
Because it still hasn't been a year and a day.
Because it still hasn't been a year and a day, and then you got, you know, Perrin and Berylane on the other side of that, and she's trying to flirt with him, and so yeah, you have more of a symmetrical relationship there.
Oh, man, because that could have worked. If Roland and Perrin had become uneasy allies, that could have been an avenue by which the Brotherless could have been brought into the coalition.
And they wouldn't have had to fight for Rand and the quote-unquote, you know, false Kara Karn. They would have been able to fight for Perrin.
Because spitting in Sightblinder's eye is still a thing the Brotherless want to do. They're not dark friends.
Oh, not at all. They're still honorable people. They don't believe that Rand is they believe that Couladin was the Kara Karn.
Yeah, they've been misguided, but they're still fundamentally good people. They're just deeply misguided. Oh man, that would have been so fucking cool. But Perrin was very unreasonable on that one particular point.
And I think it would have been especially cool if Aiel had been the connection between them that brought the Brotherless into, you know, it's like, wait, no, they can be our allies type situation, right? Like
appropriate for Perrin's wife to
exactly.
be a great reconciler, but the heat of battle doesn't allow that to happen. But it's such a major missed opportunity, the humanitarian crisis.
Well, especially as Perrin reacts to the behanding that he did, right? Like what's a great way to make up for that? You know, form an alliance with the people that you were trying to wipe out.
Yeah, an unrepayable blood debt, where it's like, I behaved as the most shameful kind of blacksmith you ever did see, so now I owe it to all of you to
try and save as many of your lives as possible.
Or at least to get you to the right side of the battlefield rather than just slaughtering you with good Two Rivers men, right? Like, he spends a bunch of his people on killing people who could have been brought to the side of the light in the final battle. Perrin is blinded when it comes to the people that captured his wife. That's one of his big flaws that he needs in order to not be too perfect. But oh, I love that. I love that alternative idea. That would have been great.
And like, you can still have the battle. You can still wipe out the Shaido. But you have a huge contingent of Brotherless who are looking to leave anyway. And so have them gathered up, have them in a group, have them have Aiel, Perrin come in, have her negotiate, and have them join his side to fight against the other Shaido. Done and dusted. Love it. Would love it. And then you got all sorts of crazy dynamics that can go on between the four of them, which would have been delicious.
The drama. Yeah, that would have been great. But instead,
we washed the spears.
Yes.
Singing, the Moshane Shaido ran to their deaths.
To dance their deaths.
Ran to dance their deaths.
It's so heartbreaking. But yeah, then Grandal is looking at Samael being like, what are you smoking? It's like literally the conversation.
Basically. I'm asking the same thing, right? And it goes all the way to his weird-ass plan in the next... I mean, he dies in the next chapter with his trip to Shadar Logoth.
Yeah. Is so ill-advised.
So ill-advised. So weird. Such a random behind-your-back... Wait, he died how?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
All the way up through his death. What are you smoking? Yeah. And then Grandal's like, first of all, I shouldn't be competing with this third-age hussy about boob size, but whatever. And then maybe I should go throw myself on Demondred's mercy. Oh, he doesn't have any mercy. But I'm with this crackhead, tweaking meth head. What? It's like, Grandal, how did you get yourself in this situation? You're wearing a titty shirt that's about to fall off, and you've tied yourself to a crackhead.
And she's like, I might rise with you, but I'm not falling with you. This is giving me very Breaking Bad vibes. You know, you've got like Jesse and Walter White, but like in reverse somehow.
I still have never watched Breaking Bad, so give me that look.
I think everyone on the podcast can picture that look. Okay, moving on. So he opens a gateway back to his place in Ilion. One thing I did want to ask about is, how is he so good at just opening gateways in this random spot in the forest? Did he stand there for a long time and learn how to open gateways? where's the familiarity thing that has to happen before you can just randomly open gateways from a random place in the middle of the forest? Shouldn't that take 24 hours? Has he been hanging out, like, waiting for them to call him? Like, what is going on there? And there's that, like, supposedly gatewaying to a place helps you know it, so you can gateway away from it easier, but, like...
That's what I'm leaning on, but that feels like a hand-wavy hole.
It does feel like a hand-wavy hole.
And then she does the same thing. She opens a gateway to her palace in Aradoman.
And we see through the gateways to the place where we know they're not skimming.
Well, okay, maybe he's been tracking them and, opened up a gateway where he thought they were all going to meet up like a day before or something like that. Because when they arrive with Galina, it's like, you took your time, like it's been days. Like it implies that they've been there for a day. So if he's been tracking Sevanna...
Or maybe they were meeting in a location, and he knew about that location ahead of time, and so he
was able to be there ahead of time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then apparently Grandal came along with him on at least one of those trips, so that way she was able to then do it.
That's the only way to fill that hole. But that implies that this has been his plan for a little while, and that they've scouted the location and
which is hard to believe.
Very hard to believe.
His behavior. It feels like a bit of a hole.
It does. It feels like Jordan sort of let the mechanics of opening gateways go away with the Forsaken a little bit. It was just like, oh, they get to do whatever they want. They're Forsaken. They know a way around that.
Especially given that this is a Aiel chapter, and to the Aiel, the power is very mysterious. You almost get some Eye of the World-ism level, evil works in mysterious ways. Just roll with it. So yeah, that's a hole.
And I always have to wonder, is he dipping into the true power? Is that what's going on here?
I don't think the Dark One is giving him access
you don't think he's giving him access? No.
He's too dumb. Why would the Dark One give it to him?
I do want to talk about this. Althor isn't going after anyone, Samael laughed. All I have to do is wait. Does he know about the wound in Rand's side? Because he got rushed back to the palace, and that was big news pretty much right away. I assume that got...
He would probably know within 6-12 hours of that happening. He wouldn't know what the wound is, because Padon Fane is neither old nor new.
But I imagine that quote is related to the wound in his side. That he's like... And Rand even talks about that's one of the reasons he goes after Samael. He's like, no one will expect me to be up and moving around at this point.
That is true. And Samael is very surprised when Rand shows up.
Absolutely. So
yeah, I bet, I agree.
Seems to be a reference to the knowing about the wound in his side and him being laid up in bed.
It's like, Althor just got magic stabbed in ways that we don't fully understand, but he's laid up. I'm good. He'll probably die from a festering wound in a few days anyway, so it's good.
That's probably why he says all I have to do is wait.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm. That he knows that Rand is up in bed with a wound that is unable to be healed by Aes Sedai.
Yeah, because he's got eyes and ears right there. And they're waiting around for hours before Flynn gets there to work his miracle, so...
And Rand mentions that, hey, at this point, I think it's 2 days or something that he's down. He's like, everyone and their mother will will know that I'm out and will think that I'm incapacitated. Okay. So then the final POV.
Yes, Shadar Haran.
Shadar Haran, just so good. I just want to read this whole thing.
Yeah, I figured you probably would, because it's good.
The Myrddraal moved from the deeper shadows, becoming visible. In its eyes, the gateways had left a residue. 3 patches of glowing mist. It could not tell one flow from another, but it could distinguish Saidin from Saidar by the smell. Saidin smelled sharp, like the edge of a knife, the point of a thorn. Saidar smelled soft, but like something that would grow harder the harder it was pressed. No other Myrddraal could smell the difference. Shadar Haran was like no other Myrddraal. Picking up a discarded spear, Shadar Haran used it to upend the bag Samael had discarded, and then to stir the bits of stone that fell out. Much was happening outside the plan. Would these events turn chaos, or... Angry black flames raced down the spear haft from Shadar Haran's hand the hand of the shadow. In an instant, the wooden haft was charred and twisted. The spearhead dropped off. The Myrddraal let the blackened stick fall and dusted soot from its palm. If Samael served chaos, then all was well. If not... A sudden ache climbed the back of its neck. A faint weakness washed along its limbs. Too long away from Shale Ghul. That tie had to be severed somehow. With a snarl, it turned to find the edge of shadow that it needed. The day was coming. It would come. So much to unpack in those simple statements. Obviously, no other Murdral could smell the difference. Shadar Haran was like no other Murdral. The hand of the dark, right? This is the Dark One taking over the body of a Murdral.
Yeah, this is an avatar puppet thing happening.
But I imagine the integration is a lot like LTT in the mind of Rand.
So you think this was probably a regular Murdral that has been infected?
At some point, and we can trace Shadar Haran back to the Eye of the World, right? Because Shadar Haran is unlike any other Murdral, that he has a sense of humor. So he smiles. So anytime you have a reference to a Murdral that smiles, you know that is Shadar Haran.
And that goes all the way back to Eye of the World.
Right. A Murdral confronts Rand at the Stag and Lion, and it smiles as he approaches him. Eye of the World, Chapter 17.
Yeah, like Rand's got a glass of milk and doesn't know how to hold his sword properly. Oh, I always just chalk that up to being an Eye of the Worldism, but I don't like that anymore. Now I want to say it's Shaido Haran. That makes way more sense.
In the prologue of The Great Hunt with Boars and the Dark Friend Social, a Murdral smiles and is present for that. In the Faldar Keep, the Fade that encounters Rand smiles as it approaches him.
So Shadar Haran, I always assumed Shadar Haran was something that happened because the seals were breaking and like comes about halfway through the series. He's been around probably since Rand was born, or at least since Rand like hit his maturity or something.
Well, I assume since the first seal was broken as well, but
okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't one of the seals broken before Rand got... I mean, that's a good question. Because they find a broken seal in the Eye of the World.
Well, it's not broken at first, right? It's only broken after the battle. Yeah, no, because she holds up a disc, and then later she's holding pieces of pottery. When the boys first see the seal, it's whole. It might be failing, but it's broken after the battle with issue 1.0.
Inside this chest lies the Horn of Valir, the Dagon Banner, and a broken seal. Moraine puts the pieces of the seal into her pouch.
I'd have sworn that she holds the disc up whole first.
She puts the pieces together and shows it to them.
Oh, she fits them together.
So we've got and I'm just going down the list. So that's the first one. Second seal is Baal Domon's, and that becomes in Turok's possession, as well as the third seal, which Turok already had. Those are both broken, most likely during the fight in Turok's Manor. The fourth seal is still intact. It's from the Stone of Tyr in the Holding. The fifth seal is in the Panarch's Palace. It's hidden by the inverted weave.
And that one breaks on their trip back to Tarvalon. Yeah, well, to Saladar, but yeah.
The sixth seal is in the Ruidian storeholds, and that's the one that Moraine shaves with a knife.
Oh.
And that's still intact.
Okay.
And the seventh one is the one that Mazarim Taim gives to Rand. So that's the one that was in possession of the Dark, most likely in possession of Zamandred at some point or another. And the three that are intact are the one that given to him by Taim, the one from Ruidian, and the one from the Stone of Tyr.
Okay. So we can assume that the one that breaks at the Eye of the World was not broken until roughly the events of the Eye of the World. It probably wasn't hanging out broken for 2,000 years.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So that's probably when Shaido Haran comes onto the scene.
That's my assumption. I think we also talked about maybe the first seal breaking is what allowed Agenor and Bethalmel to escape.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the use of the well is what allowed them to escape. There's a lot of we're not sure exactly when it does break.
Yeah, I've always been confused about the whole Murdral don't have a sense of humor thing, because they enjoy rape and torture. And it's just so hard for me to imagine creatures that have enjoyment of sadism but don't have a sense of humor.
They enjoy pain, but not... They wouldn't enjoy anything that you and I also enjoy.
Right, but it's wouldn't they smile if they're enjoying hurting someone?
Yeah, I mean, that does feel... Again, that's why that early Murdral feels a little more like an Eye of the Worldism rather than an early Shadar Haran, because it does feel like, just a mention of a smiling Murdral is like, oh yeah, he was about to win. He was feeling good because he was about to do the good thing. Right,
and Nicholas in chat is saying, and I'm pretty sure he's right, the poem in the Faldara Dungeon, Varen comments on it as Murdral having a sly sense of humor, which could be a sort of a euphemism for cleverness rather than comedy. Yeah, I've never really considered tracing out all the instances of Myrddraal showing humor as being evidence of Shadar Haran. I always assumed he just sort of pops into existence basically when Moradin comes into existence. I kind of have always sort of linked those two together, mostly because I couldn't keep them straight in my head for the first few reads and I wasn't sure which one was which. But at this point, he's bigger, bolder, more powerful, all the things. At this point, he is distinctly Shadar Haran. He's got a name, he's got unique abilities, he's got POVs.
Right, he's able to use the true power with that black flame in somehow or another, right? Yeah, this is definitely Shadar Haran.
But yeah, I like what you said about how it's maybe like LTT in Rand's head. Like, there's a bit of a fight between, like, the Myrddraal's original soul versus the Dark One, like, taking over and being like, you are my puppet. You are my sock puppet.
Because the incidence of Myrddraal in the Trolloc population is the same as channelers in the human population, we assume the Myrddraal are the result of male, quote-unquote, channelers in the Trolloc population. And when they are converted and twisted, they become Fades. And so
they ostensibly have channeling genes somewhere.
Right. And so I imagine that's how the Dark One is able to take possession of the Fade, is he's able to use the same, basically, 13 Myrddraal, 13 Aes Sedai trick to open up that person, you know, and then maybe do that to a Fade instead of to a person. And you have a vessel that can hold a piece of the Dark One.
I love the idea of the Fade, like, trying to maintain control of itself and being like, I am me!
You know, and that's that weakness in the back of his spine, is the original soul and the original Fade, who, like, was trying to take back control of his body. Because if you're too long away from Shaido Aiel, then the original soul can take back over.
Oh, I like that a lot.
And then we also get this mention of the plan. And it's kind of funny that, like, the plan is chaos.
So you can't put planning on chaos.
Yeah, I have to wonder if maybe one of the reasons that Samael never got resurrected, not just because of his corruption of Mashadar, is simply because the Dark One didn't really think he was serving the Chaos the way he wanted him to. He wasn't being a useful tool. He was being dumb.
He was being, like, self-centered and selfish, and that brings a certain order.
True.
Right? He's dumb, and in a way that brings order. His simplicity, his stupidity makes him predictable, makes him not very chaotic. I mean, stupidity can be quite chaotic, but in this particular instance, it seems like you have to just cleverly be monkey wrenching the system, not trying to order things to your own benefit in order to truly serve chaos.
But I imagine the plan has two parts, right? Create chaos around Rand and then use that chaos to drive him to destroy the world.
Right, and Samael is basically setting Rand up to capture another kingdom that is well organized.
Yeah.
Not very chaotic.
Not very helpful. That tie had to be severed somehow. That's always an interesting way of putting it, especially when we see... It feels like just breaking the seals would do that.
Maybe it has to be done in the right way to not, like... I mean, maybe the Myrddraal would be able to regain possession of itself if the seals break too soon or... something. In the wrong way.
That is something that I'd always wondered about. Why doesn't the Dark One just break all the seals? Why does he wait? Why not just takes those hypothetical 3 guys with a hammer and just hit all the seals, break them open, and let himself free? He's got them in his possession. He's got the ability to do so. Why let Rand take them back? Why give him that opportunity? Sorry.
I think it's because you have to have Rand on board with destroying the world. Rand has to want to destroy the world in order for the mission to work. You just let the Dark One out, you basically create what Mistborn has.
Right.
Right? A world that's totally fucked, but still has people who will fight in it.
And by letting the Dark One out, you actually make the Rand a little more powerful, right? Because he's the balancing force.
Exactly. So you have to get Rand fully on board with the nihilism and fully despairing. Then is your opportunity to strike. And that's something that really isn't apparent throughout most of the series, like, at all. You're just like, why don't they just kill him? And it's because it's more complicated than that. But most of the minions of the dark, much less the minions of the light, don't know that. They think it's a very simple, straightforward good on evil, and it's more of a mind game, really.
Well, and the Dark One really represents more like depression and nihilism than an actual evil force. It's like the part of ourselves. Yeah, the Dark One is not a fascist. The Dark One is an existentialist. Not that that's a system of government, but... I was going to say, relating those two is a little hard. Apples and potatoes, yeah, it's not a thing. No. But yeah, it's the Dark One is not interested in possessing the world in a human sense. It's a much more emotional pit of despair.
Yeah, it's weird how much the Dark One is not actually what we associate with evil. What we think of as evil is all these other things that aren't the Dark One.
And in the battle, it doesn't seem obvious. Like, we always sort of get this, the Dark One wants to break the wheel so he can escape, right? Because the wheel is his prison. But that doesn't really seem like his goal in the last battle. His goal in the last battle is, like, he still wants to play, he just wants to play with the reality in his own way. He wants, like, revenge. But almost he doesn't need it, because he offers the deal of oblivion.
Yeah. I think that's what he really wants. Because my belief is that the Dark One is entropy.
The end goal
is
is
just
to get
entropy personified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just to end all things, heat, death of the universe is the ultimate goal.
And because we have a cyclical universe, we don't have natural entropy pulling us towards the end of the world. We have a sentient force, and the cyclical nature of the universe is what creates that sentient force, because otherwise there would be no mechanic for ending things.
Right. Basically, the Dark One is just Ishi at a whole other level. It's the same train of thought, but I really don't think that the Dark One is a living thing. I think it is the personification of entropy. And I guess the creator is gravity. Bringing everything back together.
I mean, the creator is God, in this case. The Big Bang, basically. The spark that started it all and then doesn't interfere. Other than say, in all caps, I won't interfere.
Which is extremely interfering.
Right,
so.
yes, yeah. Quantum mechanics will tell you that's a huge perturbance.
You've just collapsed the state by observing it,
right,
okay?
Yeah, please don't do that.
Please do not observe the experiment, thank you.
Well, in fairness, yeah, you can yell into a box and affect its wave state without having the results known to you and affecting yours. Anyway.
Yeah. Schrodinger's reality.
Yeah. God damn it, Jordan.
Yeah,
I know. Jordan is physics, man. I swear to God, there's so much physics buried in the Wheel of Time. Like, it's in there. He really knew his stuff, and he incorporated it into his mythology in a way that just blows my mind that a man with a physics degree did this kind of writing, and was that sort of literary person.
It's very impressive.
Badger. Nice. I was saying, who's the head of the red? And goes a redhead. This is a good pun. Good pun.
Nice.
Appreciate that. By the way, check out, if you haven't, we were on Tarvalon After Dark. It came out a couple days ago. Played a game about puns, so...
Somebody won. And it was a pun game, and I hated every second of it.
I loved it. It was like my favorite thing we've ever done in my life. Also, we did some commercials and some other voices that were just top notch. Yeah,
highly recommend you go listen to that. We had way too much fun,
and the production quality is very high on there. The writing and their recording production, and their editor is fantastic.
And I have invited them back, or to come on for Crown of Tangents. So yes. You guys will get to hear their insanity in our arena shortly, but you should definitely go check out our insanity in their arena, because it was fun. Random commercial.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?